Sheikh says, what is puberty, and are there, what are the signs of puberty? There are certain signs by which we know that a boy or a girl has reached that age of maturity or puberty. The Sheikh says there are some which are combined between the male and the female, but there are some which are specific for a male, or the signs which are basically shared is, first of all, growth of the pubic hair, which is beneath the armpits and between the legs, and likewise the mustache for the male. Then there is the wet dream, and then there is reaching the age of 15, right? So any of these, right? If you don't have any of these but you reach the age of 15, then this now is, you've gone into puberty. And as for those which are specific to the girls, then it is al-hayd, which is menstruation. And so if she menstruates, she has now entered into womanhood, or what is supposed to be, or what is maturity. We have to make a distinction between puberty and maturity, mental maturity. They are not the same thing, right? So sometimes there can be some boys or girls, they reach mental maturity before they have any of the signs of puberty, right? And vice versa. There can be the signs of puberty in the boy or the girl, but they might not reach mental maturity till many, many years afterwards. Right? So this is a variation in boys and girls. When do they develop the signs of puberty? When do they actually become mentally mature, which is al-Buloogh? When do they reach mental maturity? These actually are different. They're two separate things, and they are different and they vary. Now, after this, the Shaykh goes on to say, فَإِذَا حَاضَتْ بَلَغَتْ. When she menstruates, she's now reached she's reached the age of maturity. And so this normally happens from the age of 9 onwards up until 15. If she hasn't menstruated till 15, then at the age of 15 she is now considered to be have reached the age of maturity, and she is a woman. Now this is something, as I said, there is a natural variation in boys and girls as to when they reach the age of maturity and puberty. For that reason, because this is something that Allah Azza wa Jal has created in His creation, and every boy or girl reaches that maturity at different times, what this has led to is that, and also there are things from the climate and the culture also that affect these things as well. Generally in hotter climates, generally speaking, puberty can come earlier. For that reason, we see that some of the scholars of the Muslims, they explain how in their travels they have come across women who are grandmothers at the age of 20 or 21. Why? Because the earliest that they have known a girl to menstruate is at the age of 9. And that's why Aisha radiallahu anha said that when a girl menstruates, then she has become a woman. And the earliest that is known is at the age of 9 years old. So basically, in that time, it wasn't common, but you would come across, someone who got married at the age of 9, had a child 9 months afterwards. That child, that female, then got married at the age of 9, and then had a child after 9 months, after 9 or so months, right? So you can be at the roughly age of 20, 21, and you could be a grandmother, right? So this is something known. Not common, but it was known. Okay. So the point that I'm making here, because I want to stay on this point here that the Shaykh is mentioning, it's like a slight diversion. So the Shaykh says, فَإِذَا حَاضَتْ بَلَغَتْ. So when she reaches menstruation, then she reaches the age of maturity. And as I said, historically speaking, all across the world, until fairly recent times, the ages at which someone could marry were fairly low. Like, for example, even in the States now, there are certain states in the US where basically, well, it's not so much marriage, but it's more to them, what is the age of consent, right? The age of having sexual relations. And you see there are some states where the age is fairly low. It's like 7, 9, it's, whatever it might be, because that's historically what they were. And that's because, historically speaking, the ability of a child to understand and make decisions, it was actually quite low, because boys and girls matured quite quickly because of the social and economic situations, right? They had to work, quite early in their lives, and through that they experienced life and became wise quickly, and so they're able to make rational decisions at a much younger age, and so the age of consent was low, right? So now the point in all of this, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because in the next sentence the Shaykh says, وَإِن زَوَّجَتْ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ فَبِالْحَمَلِ. Right, so pay attention now. فَإِذَا حَاضَتْ بَلَغَتْ. That when the female menstruates, she has now reached Buloogh, the age of maturity. وَإِن زَوَّجَتْ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ. But if she is married before that, right, meaning before menstruating, فَبِالْحَمَلِ, right, then she reaches maturity by way of pregnancy. Right? So I want to stop on this sentence here and just explain something here, because this is a shubha, a misconception which is brought by some of the kuffar and the haters of Islam. We call them Islam haters instead of Islamophobia. It's not a good word, because the phobia is like an irrational fear of something. Right? So, arachnophobia. You're scared of spiders. But there's no reason for you to be scared of a tiny speck. Right? So a phobia is like an irrational fear. So when you say Islamophobia, it's like a irrational fear of it's not really a good word to use, because the meaning that we're trying to get across is people who hate Islam, dislike Islam, they have enmity towards Islam, and they want to bring every kind of shubha, every kind of misconception in order to paint the horriblest picture that they possibly can. So they go through the Quran and they look at many of the ahkam in the Sharia, and they try to find things and they try to put across shubuhat. One of them is actually this issue here that the Shaykh has alluded to, because what it means is that someone can be a girl can be married before her menstruation, and she enters maturity when she actually becomes pregnant, right? So now this raises the issue now that we have to basically answer, right? And there isn't anything to be ashamed of in our religion, because this is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all of the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is absolute wisdom, there is benefit for mankind, they are for all times and all places, right? These ahkam of the Sharia, they do not expire, they are for all times and all places, because they are based upon the fundamental facts and realities of human nature and of human biology, and that's what they are basically based upon. So what I want to do is, because we alluded to this point, so I guess the first point really is that let's go back 1,000 years or however many years, where it was customary until even in recent times, for people to get married as soon as they reach the age of maturity, right? So it could be that the boy is 13, 14, the girl is 9, 10. This is known in civilizations and in cultures. This is known until even, I believe, even today, the Hindus have this custom where basically the man has to be 3 times older than the girl he's getting married to. This is in their customs and in their, which means that if the guy is 30 years old, he's marrying a 10-year-old. This happens amongst them. Okay? But what I'm saying here is that let's go back 1,000 years, and it can be the case that someone is 13, 14, and the girl is 10, 11. She hasn't menstruated yet. All right? She hasn't menstruated yet. But they get married. And it is for the parents to allow them to cohabit or not. Right? So this is now down to the parents. When they decide, are they ready to live together or not? That's something for the parents to decide, based upon the culture and the habits of whatever it might be. So this is a scenario that can arise where if divorce takes place, because there might be a reason for divorce, then because there is no menstruation, what now then is the waiting period? Because there's no menstruation. Do you understand? Because we know that for divorce there has to be 3 menstrual cycles. So what do we do now? Okay, this is one scenario here, which is covered by the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal when He said, this is Surah At-Talaq, chapter 65, verse number 4. This is the ayah. In this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَاللَّاتِي يَئِسْنَ مِنَ الْمَحِيضِ مِن نِسَائِكُمْ, those who do no longer expect menstruation amongst your women. In irtabatum, if you doubt, whether they're going to menstruate or not, then فَعِدَّتُهُنَّ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْهُرٍ. Then their waiting period is 3 months, right? So this now is by time, not by menstrual cycle, right? It's an actual time, 3 months. Meaning those women who, for example, they might be reaching the menopause, they're not going to menstruate anymore, right? So because they can't menstruate, we can't work out 3 menstrual cycles. So, and also the wisdom behind the waiting period is to make sure that they are not pregnant, and so they don't marry another man, because then it might be confusing as to who is the real father, and then this leads to confusion in the genealogy, and then this leads to other implications to do with inheritance and things like that, right? So this is from the wisdoms. So in this case, the woman waits for 3 months. Then it says, then in the next part it says, Wallahi lam yahidna. And then those who have not yet menstruated. Then those who have not yet menstruated. So this is where these people from the kuffar and they say, oh, look at this verse. It says those who have not yet menstruated. That means those who have not yet menstruated can actually be married. Okay, so the ruling in this verse is yes, for those as well, then basically they would also have to wait for 3 months because they haven't yet actually menstruated yet. Okay, so you get this particular scenario. There's a scenario here where this ruling applies to them. So now what these kuffar and these Islam haters have done is said, look, see, in your religion, you marry pre-pubescent girls, you marry them off. Okay, so there's a number. I'm going to read from you just some commentary. You can find this on the noblequran.com in relation to this verse. But I'm going to just read through this so that you have an understanding of the wisdom behind this, and that there's nothing in our religion to be ashamed about, because it is guidance for mankind in all situations, in all times, for all scenarios. And so the commentary is as follows. This verse relates to divorce. and addresses numerous types of women in a divorce situation. They include women who have reached or passed the menopause. They no longer menstruate. Okay? The women who have never menstruated at all due to the inability to do so. Right? There is a percentage of women who suffer from this condition it's called the pronunciation, amenorrhea. Amenorrhea, that's what it's called. And what this means is, there's two types of this, is that they don't menstruate. It can either be primary amenorrhea, which means that you've reached the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, but you're not menstruating, right? If you don't menstruate, you are now said to have this condition, primary amenorrhea. You can't menstruate. So there's women in that category, and they may not menstruate they might continue not to menstruate till they're 20, 25, and that could be due to many different reasons. They have their weight is very, they don't weigh much, they don't have the right nutrition. There could be many reasons why they're not menstruating. And then this is primary amenorrhea. Then there's also secondary amenorrhea. This is where a woman has actually menstruated, but at some point the menstruation stops, but it's well before the menopause, right? When women stop menstruating when they reach 40, 45 plus. Okay, so this is now a second category that would come under this ayah. It would come under this verse, right? What it says, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, those who have not yet menstruated. And then a third category is those girls who have been married off by their fathers, and that could be due to a beneficial interest, right? A beneficial interest. Islamically, it is permitted for the father to marry his daughter, even though she hasn't reached the age of maturity, if there is a beneficial interest in doing so, right? And so this is the third situation. Regarding this third situation, it is when a father marries off his daughter while she is a minor, below the age of mental and physical maturity, due to some beneficial interest that would otherwise be lost. This situation can be frequently found in the history of nations all across the world, and many examples exist even amongst royalty, the rich people, kings. Kings and queens married off their daughters at a very young age because a particular person of royalty or good standing or good character, well-to-do and of means, was available. But if they delayed marrying off their daughter, they would lose this potential husband to somebody else's daughter. Right? Do you understand? This is in order to preserve your interests, you might want to give your daughter in marriage early. It doesn't mean that she goes and lives. No, it means that you give the girl in marriage so as to avoid losing a good husband. Right? So the Muslim jurists point out that a girl should not be married off until she has reached Buloogh. Right? This is the general thing, that you do not marry the daughter off until she's reached the age of maturity and has expressly given her permission. Right? This is the asl, the foundation. Unless there is some beneficial interest in her getting married, right? And that beneficial interest would be lost. Right? Meaning that you would find a nice, well-to-do husband, and if you don't give your daughter in marriage at this point, then you're going to lose out on potential benefit for the daughter. So now this is what some of the scholars say, but some of the scholars like Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, they say, well, okay, even though this would be permitted to do, the greatest principle being applied is the principle of permission. Right? The permission is uppermost. So for example, if the father was to marry off his daughter while she is young, due to a beneficial interest, then when the daughter reaches the age of maturity, she should now be given a choice if she wishes to continue with the marriage when she reaches maturity and is able to give her permission or deny her permission. Right, that's Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, right? That when a girl is married off by the father and she's, from the, she's a saghira, not reached the puberty. When she reaches puberty, she now has to be asked, do you want to continue in this marriage? Do you give your permission or not? And that's because the issue of permission, seeking the permission, is greater than whatever beneficial interest the father initially saw in giving his daughter away in marriage, right? So now you can see here how the wisdom in all of these things, in that the father, sometimes the father can see a beneficial interest, and he's completely correct and right in giving his daughter away in marriage at that point in time because of the beneficial interest. And also, as some of the scholars explain, when the girl reaches that age of puberty or maturity, she has the right to exit from the from the marriage. So hence the marriage would only be consummated if she has given her permission and when the father has allowed cohabitation. Right? After the marriage contract, the time of cohabitation would then be decided by the parents. Okay. So the scenario is that we know that girls can be married off by their parents in an exceptional circumstance where they see a beneficial interest. However, this does not mean that they start going, no. The cohabitation is decided by the parents. When do we allow them to actually live together? And that is not dependent upon menstruation, right? Because as we said, menstruation may not happen till the age of 15, or it may not even happen at all till, for whatever reason, right? So therefore, there are scenarios and situations in which a divorce or a separation might take place, in which the ruling has to be given, where because there is no menstruation, then it's given a time period rather than 3 menstrual cycles, in which case it is 3 months, right? So after that, keeping in mind that menstruation may not take place until the age of 15 years or even later, it is possible for the husband and wife to engage in relations prior to her menstruation if her guardian has allowed cohabitation, right? So this is to do with the parents allowing and making the decision, when do we allow them to live together and have relations. So as we said before, like what we're doing here is we are answering these people, these Islam haters who don't have any understanding or appreciation, or they actually pretend to be ignorant of these fundamental facts of human biology and nature, and of what civilizations and cultures and nations have known and acted upon for thousands of years, right? They're trying to single out Islam in order to create this kind of a commotion. So it is possible for the husband and wife to engage in relations prior to the menstruation if the guardian has allowed cohabitation. However, if in this time the husband decides to divorce his wife, then this is a situation in which this ruling in this verse comes to play. A waiting period of 3 months is to verify that she has not become pregnant, such that when the divorce is complete, she is free to remarry without there being any possibility of confusion about the real father of any child she might bear. Okay. Now, as for the commencement of marital relations, then Muslim jurists state that the condition of physical readiness and absence of any harm is what is the basic condition, right? The Muslim jurist Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said, Malik, al-Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa said that it is the ability to engage in intercourse or marital relations that defines the time when a father allows his daughter to cohabit with her husband. This varies from one person to another and does not have a specific age, and this is what is correct. Sharh Sahih Muslim, volume 9, page 206. Thus, a father will decide when his daughter is ready to engage in relations and allow cohabitation. The Muslim jurist also makes clear that a marriage contract on its own does not allow marital relations. Pay attention here. Right, the aqd of the nikah in itself is not what allows relations to take place. But rather it is the principle based upon the prophetic tradition. Right, meaning that there's no harm and there's no reciprocating harm. That's the basic principle, right? There is no causing of harm or reciprocating harm. La darar wa la dirar. So that hadith has been made the principle which allows sexual relations, not the actual marriage contract. Right? So pay attention to that. There is no causing of harm or reciprocating harm, the hadith la darar wa la dirar. Hence, when there is physical readiness and absence of harm, then relations can take place, and this would be evaluated and decided by the parents. Likewise, the Muslim jurists make clear that all impediments to harmful sexual activity must be absent before cohabitation is allowed. With the Shafi'i jurists, so the Shafi'is, they hold that even if the husband requests cohabitation with the reassurance that he will not engage in marital relations, the parents are not to release their daughter even if the husband was known to be trustworthy, to be thiqah. Do you understand? Right? As for ages of physical and mental maturity, then they are not fixed and they vary from era to era and place to place. Prior to the 19th century, the age-based distinctions of child and youth and teen and adult, these never existed, right? So these things didn't exist before the 19th century. And girls simply became women, boys simply became men at the age of puberty or mental maturity. These two might coincide, meaning puberty and mental maturity, they could happen at the same time, or they might be delayed from one from the other, as we mentioned earlier on. So once that's clear, after that, so basically this is left to the customs and the norms of the society in which people are living. So that kind of basically covers all of that really. There's some kind of scenarios given here. I won't really go into all of them. So is all of that clear, right? So basically, this is a ruling in the Sharia in relation to divorce, and the women who may be divorced can fall into different categories. There are those who obviously menstruate, which is the normal situation, so they're divorced. So therefore here it's three menstrual cycles, which is not exactly a month, right? It can be 28 days, whatever it might be, or less or more, right? So it's based on the cycle, 3 cycles. However, there are some women who come into the category of not having menstruation. This could be of a number of categories. It's menopausal, coming to the menopause or reach the menopause and long beyond the menopause, number 1. Number 2, it can be those married off young, who got married young, have not yet had a menstrual period. And number 3, it can be those who have passed like the age of 16 and beyond, and they've not menstruated. Right? This could be a medical condition. Or it could be those who had menstruation and then at some point they stopped menstruating again due to a medical reason. So they no longer menstruate. and there are a percentage of women, it can be like a few percent, I don't know, it's said to be a couple of percent that women suffer from these conditions, then how do you deal with that situation when it comes to the issue of divorce, right? What do you go by? So the ruling in all these situations is basically that you take the actual time period now of 3 actual months for the iddah period. Okay, so anyhow, I just wanted to cover that just so that we are able to answer this shubha if a disbeliever comes along and says, oh look, in this verse it says such and such, right? Wallahi lam yahidn, it means that we're able to explain this. So we have no shyness. We're not going to step on the back foot and apologize. No, we're going to say it with confidence that this is our sharia. It is the most perfect, wise sharia, which is based upon the fundamental facts of human nature. And all of this is in the context of marriage as determined by the parents who decide when their daughter is allowed to cohabit with the husband. And this comes back down to what is a cultural norm or a custom. And in all nations and civilizations, they have their own cultures and habits as to when. So we're not going to apologize for this. And this is our sharia. And we are proud that this is the most perfect guidance. And in any case, first of all, in your societies, don't you have single mothers, so like 13, 14, 15 on welfare or whatever, walking with the prams with the babies, and you say this is just your freedom of choice, and this is their rights and whatever. They must, so clearly not all, some of them don't reach puberty till the age of 15, so they are sexually active, right? This happens in your societies, right? And not only that, you have the UN and the WHO giving like the sexual guidance now to all nations, right? Where they're basically encouraging kids from the age of 4 to be introduced to sexual activity and all these like filthy things where they're trying to draw them into becoming sexually active at the age of 4. And they actually have this publication that they put out many years back in which these guidelines, and they have all these charts where they say from the age of 6 months and from the age of 1 year and then 4 years, like what activities should you introduce to these children. And then they mention things, I won't mention the things, whatever, but they want to make them active from the age of 4, right? But all of this, see, all of this now here is from a completely different angle from what has come in the Sharia, right? In the Sharia, it is marriage and the rights of people and keeping people chaste, and it's like within a certain context. Here for these people, it is from the angle of destroying society and making children see what, as you've just seen from these ayat and what we're discussing, right? Have you noticed how in this verse, test the orphans up until they reach the age of maturity? What does that mean, right? It means teach them and examine them and train them to become responsible and mentally competent, right? So that when they reach the age of marriage, they are able to handle their wealth. So this implies a number of things, right? That when you get married, it means that you should already be in a position where you are mentally mature. You can handle commercial, affairs. You can handle monetary affairs, and so that also means that you are mature enough to have marital relations and to have children. Right? Do you understand? Like all of these are basically connected together, right? However, what these people are trying to do by introduce children to early sexualization when they have no idea, they've got no mental maturity, right? There's no mental maturity. What this does is you are basically just creating children who are going to be, their behavior is going to be based upon impulse, right? It's just feeling and lust and desire that's not reined in by way of any type of mental, intellectual capacity, right? So when you push this on children, this actually destroys that child and makes him become or her become dysfunctional and unable to have meaningful relationships later on in life. And that's what they want to do, because they're trying to destroy the family, the father and the mother, and the rights that exist through the family, because they hate the family because it gets in the way of their economic and social goals, which are basically all based upon Marxism, socialism, communism, collectivism, which all of it is to do with turning people into slaves and taking their property away from them. And the way you do that is to destroy the family unit, right? So all of these are agendas that they have, which are there for economic and social goals. So I guess what we are saying is, well, why do you have an issue when the UN and the WHO and in your nations this is the basic culture and this is the idea that is being promoted, right? And so we're not going to step back and apologize. This is our Sharia. It is the revelation from Allah, the Creator, the Lord of the worlds. In it is wisdom and justice and mercy, and it accounts for every possible scenario and situation that mankind can be in. It doesn't erase the cultures and norms of people. It accommodates them, meaning that this law is applicable to all times and all ages and all eras and in all places of the earth. So this law here to do with marriage, that meaning it's up to the parents to decide the issue of marriage. This wouldn't it wouldn't affect and destroy a society and its culture. Like, for example, if you went to the Amazon jungle and found some tribes there and said, you know what, sorry, but you're going to have to implement the legal code of the Britain or whatever it might be, and sorry, you can't marry your children off till the age of 21 any longer. Well, that would ruin their the way they live, because they might marry their children off at the age of 14, 15, 16, whatever it might be. That's just their culture. That's what they've been used to, living in that place, in that environment. That's what, right? And if they were to accept Islam and become Muslim, that would not change. It would not change at all, because the rulings of Islam are built, as we said, upon the fundamental facts and realities of human nature and human biology. So they can continue marrying when they marry, and all the laws would apply, because this is the law from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it wouldn't conflict and clash with any culture or norm of any civilization or anything like that. So anyhow, I wanted to cover that, because obviously this point is raised when the Shaykh said فَإِذَا حَاضَتْ بَلَغَتْ وَإِنْ زَوَّجَتْ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ فَبِالْحَمَلِ, right? Which means that when she menstruates, this is when a girl becomes mentally mature, Buloogh, puberty. And if she's married before that, then it is by way of pregnancy, right? So this would be like the answer to all of that. So then the Shaykh goes on to say that so for the female, it's actually menstruation that determines whether she has reached puberty or not. And that's even if she doesn't have like all the other signs, like the pubic hair and things like that. It's the menstruation that counts as Buloogh for her. Anyway, this was the second condition, right? So in the verse that we're looking at, وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحِ, test and examine the orphans until they reach the age of marriage. Then if you perceive that they are kind of mentally all there and able, is the issue of Aisha's marriage radiallahu anha a way Allah tests the believers and non-believers if they'll leave or not accept Islam, in the case of the disbelievers, because of this doubt. Well, this wasn't a doubt up until recently. I mean, why didn't the pagan Arabs object to this marriage with Aisha if it wasn't acceptable? No one objected to this right up until the modern era, because this is something known, as we said, in all nations and civilizations. Because what is a man, what is a woman, when do you become a man, when do you become a woman? This has always been related to the issue of puberty, which generally has in the past coincided with mental maturity. Do you understand, right? So when because of the way life was, and before the modern era, when you reach puberty, by and large, you had mental maturity, right? It's only in the modern era where we basically see that, people reach puberty, but they don't become mentally mature till like way past 18, 19, 20, and even beyond. They're not mentally mature, right? And that's because of upbringing, the general social economic conditions, and basically the kind of type of life and whatever. So this shubha was never really brought up by any of the people of disbelief up until recent times. So we can't really say that this was a trial or test for the people of disbelief to see if they leave or accept Islam. No, because this was never an issue. It's not anything to be made out of this issue. The reason why it's been made an issue is because in the modern era you have these lifestyle philosophies which have appeared in the 20th century, these perversions to do with marriage and sexual relations. And you have all of these, first of all, you have these Satanists and worshippers of Iblis, and these people, part of what they have to do to win the assistance of the jinn, they have to do vile and evil things, right? And these are things that are not good to mention, but they do vile and evil things which involve acts of a sexual nature, and this involves women and children, and this is part and parcel of these people at the highest level who are allies with Iblis. These are the rituals that they have to do, right? So we have we have this thing here. Then we also have the philosophy and the lifestyle philosophy and liberalism, and breaking down all the barriers to sex and whatever. And so you saw in the middle of the 20th century these people, Jean-Paul Sartre, Alfred Kinsey, and all these are depraved, evil, filthy, vile perverts, right? Who encouraged and supported the idea of children, right? Relations with children, right? So they turned this into like a sexual liberation philosophy, and it became something very, very big in the 60s, 70s, right? And so, and they came with this idea of pedophilia, right? So they are the perverts, and are the ones who are basically promoted this as a lifestyle philosophy. And it became like quite a big movement in the 60s, 70s, 80s. They even had organizations, the Pedophile Information Network, or into something like that, PIE used to be called, right? Even in France it was quite big. It was quite a big movement in France. Even in the UK it was quite a big thing, until even politicians, like, it was considered to be acceptable and normal to pursue this type of thing, right? There wasn't like an uproar about it as there is now. So because these people appeared with these lifestyle philosophies, right, and they wanted to exploit children for this purpose because of a pedophilic interest, meaning people who as an orientation are interested in boys and girls before the age of puberty, right? This is a modern thing, right? It's got nothing to do with what has always been known, historically speaking, because of the reason that we mentioned earlier on, that historically speaking, the age of puberty was when you became a man or a woman and of marriageable age. That was perfectly normal. So you can't take these modern developments and use them now to basically evaluate what's happened historically. Otherwise, you have to now start accusing the kings and queens of pretty much every, like in every culture, every civilization. Even in the UK, you have King Richard III married Isabella at the age of 6. Then you have another king who came afterwards, married another Isabella at the age of 11 or 12. And you start saying, well, the kings of England, they were pedophiles and whatever. This is like academic dishonesty. You can't do that. You can't take the modern, current, what you consider to be morally immoral, use that now to evaluate past cultures and habits and you can't do that. This is academic dishonesty. You can't do that. So coming back to the question, no, this is not one of those things. I mean, it's become a test and a trial, obviously now, but we don't say that because this never became an issue until recently, and none of the people of disbelief historically, we don't see them using this as an actual argument against the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was unknown. If it had been a big issue, then we would have heard and read about it, and we have nothing of the sort, which means that there was no issue with that. It was perfectly acceptable. So yeah, that's the answer to that question in brief, inshallah. The sifat of
characteristic
of
Buloogh,
what? Sorry, what's the last bit?
The characteristic of being mature.
Being mature.
What the characteristic?
The signs or the
Signs,
from that I mentioned earlier on. You mean the signs, the physical signs of pubic hair? Is that what you mean? No.
Not puberty.
Yeah. Oh, the signs of maturity is basically when you have a comprehension of affairs. Right? So a child is able to comprehend the affairs. They know how to use money responsibly. They understand their duties. So they, for example, know that they have obligations towards the parents of good behavior and respect, and that basically any siblings who are older than them, they basically give them respect. Like they basically have a general understanding of these types of issues, and they know how to conduct themselves, right? But this is in relation to actually wealth and how to dispose of wealth, how to use wealth responsibly. That's what the context of this is, that when they reach maturity in that respect, then you're able to give the wealth back to them. But then obviously outside of that issue of wealth, then understanding can vary from child to child and in subject matter to subject matter. Do you understand, right? So here this is specifically to do with being responsible in knowing how to deal with wealth and how to look after it, preserve it, use it responsibly. But in a more general sense, obviously it's how do you know a good child has good understanding? Well, they are familiar with the affairs of the family. They are familiar with what needs to be done, like in the household, errands. Like they are observant and are aware, and they take the initiative to go and do these things. So it's like a type of awareness of how the household is functioning. What are the interests of the household, how to save money, how not to squander money, what are the errands and duties. Like when they have a general awareness of all of this and they realize the duties upon them and they do them, that's what is meant in a more general sense, that they are mature and they're mentally mature, they have a understanding of these issues. Yeah. Sorry?
Can someone use the wealth of the orphans to take care of them?
Yes. That if it's someone who is a faqir, who is poor, who's whatever, then that wealth can be used to look after the orphans, to raise the orphans. Yes, yeah, that's part and parcel of all of that. Yeah. Inshallah, we'll stop there. We'll conclude the rest of this, inshallah ta'ala, in the next lesson. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.